Alright, mate. Alright, it's done. It's done, I've left her. Yeah. Well, you know what it's been like. She keeps saying that she knows what it's like to be dead and she knows what it is to be sad. And well, it's making me feel like I've never been born. So when I went round and I seen her, I told her, I said, girl, who's put all that crap in your head? It's things that make me feel like that I'm mad. And I even told her she's making me feel like that I've never been born. And well, let me tell you, pal, she hit the roof big style. She hit it. I mean, I'm surprised she came back down. She went that high up through the roof. She said, you do not understand what I've said. So then I said, oh, well, I hit the roof at that point. I came back down. But yeah, I hit the roof and I went, no, you're wrong. Because when I was a boy, everything was right. That was before I met her, you see, when I was a boy. Now I'm a man, my friend. But yeah, anyway, after that, it just ended where I said to her, even though you know what you know, I know that I'm ready to leave because she's making me feel like I've never been born. So yeah, I'm a free man and she can go and tell someone else about how she knows what it's like to be dead. Can old Marissa, eh? Yeah. Hi, how are you anyway? You good? Well, yeah. Welcome back to Revolver In-Depth, and this is episode 7. She said. Sorry, mate, what were you saying?
Towards the end of August 1965, Brian Epstein had rented a house at 2850 Benedict Drive in Beverly Hills for the Beatles to go and have a 6-day respite from their US tour at the time. So this property was selected because it was relatively well hidden by the side of a mountain, so the Beatles went there in the hope that they would get some peace and quiet for a few days away from crowds of people. However, this peace and quiet wasn't to be because somehow this address became public knowledge, so then legions of fans would descend upon both the property and the surrounding area. Some weirdos even decided they would hire a helicopter so that they could hover above the property and spy on the band. I mean, that's normal behaviour. Anyway, the local police department would have to send some officers down to sort of patrol the area, keep fans away, give them a little bit of peace and quiet. But basically now the Beatles, they'd gone here for 6 days of peace and quiet and they couldn't leave the house. The joys of that level of fame, eh? On August 24th of 1965, the band had a party at this house, hosting Roger McGuinn and David Crosby of the Byrds, as well as actor Peter Fonda. Now, John Lennon and George Harrison decided that this party would be the second time where they would take acid. They'd first taken it earlier in the year, in March 1965, and both claimed that it had completely changed their lives and that it had created a divide within the Beatles because Paul McCartney and Ringo Starr by this point hadn't taken it, and John and George felt that they couldn't connect anymore emotionally or intellectually with Paul and Ringo. They felt that they were two very different people now. So Lennon and Harrison felt that this party was the perfect time to get McCartney and Starr to finally take acid. Now, Starr agreed to take acid for the first time this day. However, McCartney stood firm and he refused to do so. So Lennon, Harrison, Starr, McGuinn, Crosby, Fonda and Neil Aspinall all took acid, whilst McCartney and Mal Evans stayed clear of it. Now, it's worth pointing out that at this stage, the Beatles and the rest of society really didn't understand that to take acid, you kind of had to do it in a safe environment. You had to get the dosage right. Otherwise, you could risk doing some serious damage to yourself if you have a bad trip. So yeah, they didn't really fully understand the dangers of taking acid. They just thought it was this incredible thing that would expand your mind and open your mind to new possibilities. And they thought McCartney was just being stubborn. I should point out McCartney would eventually take it quite a bit later on, not in this party. I think it was 1967, I think, when he first took it. I don't think he took it in 66. He definitely didn't take it during the Revolver era. It was once they got into the Pepper era when McCartney finally gave in and took it. But yeah, at this point he was very stubborn and he wasn't taking it. Anyway, at one point during what would turn out to be a solid 2-day acid trip for the group, they all ended up in a large sunken bathtub in the house. So whilst in this bathtub, it was becoming increasingly clear that Harrison was having a bad trip. He was overcome with an extreme anxiety that he was dying. Now, it was at this point when Fonda, who was also tripping on acid, stepped in to try and reassure Harrison by sharing a story about how when he was a child, he had a near-fatal self-inflicted gunshot accident. Fonda would tell Harrison that he knows what it's like to be dead since he technically died in the operating theatre. Now, Lennon, who was also tripping on acid in this bathtub, overheard the conversation, so asked Fonda, "Who put all that shit in your head? You're making me feel like I've never been born." Now, as the acid trip went on, Fonda would eventually show the others his gunshot wound and keep telling them all how he knows what it's like to be dead. So Lennon got really annoyed with him in the end and would just chuck him out the house. But this event, it would stick with Lennon and it would eventually serve as inspiration for a new song. So we're going to fast forward now to March 1966, and this acid trip from the previous summer involving Peter Fonda had stayed with Lennon. He was working on a song inspired by it. Now, at this point, the song was called He Said, And there's actually a demo of it that is on the Super Deluxe edition of Revolver from 2022, an acoustic demo featuring just John. It's very early on, it's got some of the lyrics, some of them not quite finished. He's singing stuff like, who put all that crap in your head, you're making me feel like my trousers are torn. It's a very nice little demo, it's definitely worth a listen on the Revolver box set. Anyway, at some point after this demo had been recorded, Lennon decided that he would change the name of the song and the lyrics from He Said to She Said. Don't know why, I suppose it sounds a little better. She said, she said. Sounds a little bit more, it makes it into a little bit more of a boy-girl song. Not really a love song, because there's nothing loving about this song. But yeah, I just think it works a little, it does work better in the form of a female and a male character rather than it being two male characters. Now Harrison would later recall that one day he went along to Lennon's house in Weybridge and John was working on 3 different segments of songs. So Harrison suggested that he should merge them together, which John did, and the pair would work together on She Said that day, finishing off the words and stuff. So although this song is credited Lennon-McCartney, as it always was with John and Paul songs, really, in reality, this song is a Lennon-Harrison song. George contributed a lot to this song. It's kind of verging towards a 50-50 collaboration between the two. Paul contributed really nothing to this song, and yet he gets the credit for it. The joys of the Lennon-McCartney partnership, eh?
Now she said that I know what it's like to be dead. I know what it is to be sad, and you're making me feel like I've never been born. I said, who put all that crap in your head? Things that make me feel that I'm mad, and you make me feel like I've never been born. She said, you don't understand what I said. So I said, no, you're wrong. When I was a boy, everything was right. I said, even though I know what I know that I'm ready to go, and you make me feel like I've never been born. Hey, right, let's go. Right.
Hey, try saying all that drunk. That's how good I am. My name's Ollie and I like the Beatles, you know. Alright. So on June 21st of 1966, the Beatles were at Abbey Road Studios, or EMI Studios as it was known then, mixing and finishing off the sequencing for Revolver. But at some point during that session, they noticed quite a big issue. Don't know how they hadn't noticed it before this point. They'd only done 13 tracks. Now, tradition at this point dictated that each LP that any artist puts out should have 14 tracks on it. That was just the standard way the music industry worked at that point. But the Beatles had only done 13 tracks, so they needed to quickly fire out another song. So they would turn their attention to John's She Said, She Said. So this would be recorded during this day's session, and it's the only song for Revolver that was recorded in a singles day session. It was finished in one session. So yeah, they blitzkrieged this song. It would also therefore mean that this was the last song that was recorded for Revolver. Now to start with here, the band would rehearse the track. Now they did at least 25 rehearsals of the song, and quite a lot of these have actually managed to survive because when they came to record it, they did it quite quickly, so they didn't need to record over all these rehearsals. So if you want to hear some of them, well you can hear one of them. Rehearsal 15 is on the Super Deluxe edition of Revolver. I'll be honest, it's just an instrumental, it's not an interesting outtake to be honest, it doesn't sound all that different from the finished version, except you can hear a bit of studio chatter between John, Paul and George. I don't think you can hear Ringo talking. So yeah, it's quite interesting in that sense, but otherwise, in terms of all the rehearsals that we've ever had released and outtakes, this is not one of the more interesting ones. So anyway, after rehearsing the song, the band would now turn their attention to recording the basic track. They would successfully manage to record the basic track in just 3 takes, and take 3 would be deemed the best one, so that would be the one they would start applying overdubs to. Now for the basic track, Lennon played rhythm guitar, McCartney played bass, and Starr played drums. Now at some point after completing the basic track, an argument actually broke out within the Beatles, and we don't know what they were arguing about, but it resulted in McCartney storming off from the studio and not taking part in any more of this day's session. Now he would later claim that he didn't play on She Said, that George was the one playing the bass. However, we can see from session notes and from studio outtakes that Paul did take part in the first portion of this session. He's definitely playing bass on the basic track. It sounds very, very McCartney, the bass line. And I imagine if you listen to take 3, I'm assuming this is how people know this, if you listen to take 3 unedited, you can probably hear Paul talking before the take begins. And in the actual Revolver booklet on the box set, it does mention Paul playing bass on this song, so yeah, I think it's fair to say Paul was wrong, he's obviously misremembered. But we don't know what the argument was about, but he stormed off regardless, and then he didn't take part in anything else to do with this song. So Paul is only playing bass on this song, and that is it. So with McCartney now gone, Lennon would overdub his lead vocals onto the track, with Harrison then overdubbing some backing vocals onto it. Now as with everything else on Revolver, the Beatles recorded She Said on just a 4-track machine, so by the time Harrison had overdubbed the backing vocals onto it, all 4 tracks had been filled, but they still had more overdubs to apply. Therefore, they needed to create another reduction mix. This is a common trend with songs on Revolver. So they would create a reduction mix which would then free up 2 extra tracks, So onto the first of those 2 free tracks, Harrison would record the lead guitar, and then onto the other free track, Lennon would overdub some organ onto the track, and with that, that was it. It was finished. So yeah, they did do this song very, very fast, so it was now ready to go, and Revolver now had all 14 tracks that it needed. Revolver would be released on August 5th of 1966, and She Said would be sequenced as the 7th track on the LP. It's also the final track on side 1 of the album. Now, when Peter Fonda eventually heard this song, he apparently liked it, and when the album came out, when Revolver came out, he went to his local record store to listen to Revolver and try and find some hidden messages in it. Oh, he's one of them. I bet he played them backwards to find clues about Paul McCartney's sad demise, which I don't think had happened by this point. I don't know. I'm not stupid and believe those conspiracy theories, but I bet he's one of them. But regardless of if he is one of them, he's definitely a tight bugger, because anyone else would buy the record and take it home with them to listen for hidden messages. They wouldn't go and put it on in the record store and only listen to it there. I mean, he's obviously a tight bastard, isn't he? Right, I can't get this over enough. I absolutely love this song. This is one of my favourite, not just songs on Revolver, one of my favourite Beatles songs. I just love the story behind it. The idea that the Beatles minus McCartney were all on an acid trip, and actor Peter Fonda was there, and he was ruining it, coming around telling them, I know what it's like to be dead. Yeah, I mean, imagine being on an acid trip and you have someone whisper in your ear, hey, I know what it's like to be dead. I mean, how to ruin someone's acid trip, says someone who hasn't taken acid. But I can't imagine that helps you, especially if you're seeing things and now someone's telling you about death. I mean, did you think this would help George? I mean, poor George Harrison, he's sat there worrying about dying, thinking he's about to die, and here's this fella sat next to him, who none of them knew, actually, I should point out. They didn't really know who he was. He just showed up. And yeah, he started whispering in George's ear, I know what it's like to be dead. I mean, that must be really reassuring when you're worrying about dying. Anyway, in all the subsequent interviews where this song was ever brought up, for the rest of their lives, both Lennon and Harrison never had anything nice to say about Peter Fonda. So, yeah, he obviously was never invited to any of their parties again. Although I don't even know if he was invited to this one, if he just showed up, because Lennon claims he didn't even know who he was. So, yeah. But he knows what it's like to be dead anyway. So as I mentioned in my video for I'm Only Sleeping, go and watch that video, it's very good. But as I mentioned in that one, I'll say the same thing again here. This is my favourite era of John Lennon. I love John's psychedelic stuff. Well, not just his psychedelic stuff, but John from 65 to 67, I think was the best music John Lennon ever did. When Yoko came on the scene, I like some of the stuff they did, especially in the later day Beatles stuff, like Happiness is a Warm Gun, She's So Heavy, etc. But I feel creatively he kind of lost his way a little bit. He wasn't as creatively exciting or musically as exciting as he was in this period. And songs like She Said just go to prove that excitement that he obviously had at this point. I mean, yeah, this is another acid-fueled song, but I tell you what, Acid got quite a lot of good songs out of him in this period. Now, although this is really a John Lennon song, you can just feel that both him and George Harrison are giving this song their absolute all. They're throwing everything they have into it. I mean, speaking of everything they have into it, the lyrics of this song are brilliant, turning what was an annoying man rambling on in their ears into such a great song. She said, I know what it's like to be dead, I know what it is to be sad, and you're making me feel like I've never been born. She said, you don't understand what I said. I said, no, 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 you're wrong. When I was a boy, everything was right. I know that I'm ready to leave, etc. I just think it's incredible lyrics. And yeah, I think the lyrics are probably mainly Lennon, but I do think Harrison's contribution on this song is probably more in the melody and the music, as I think Lennon probably got most of the lyrics on his own, and then George has helped him by joining it together, which is normally a McCartney technique, to be honest, joining incomplete songs together. So here's Harrison coming up with it as well and creating a great song. She Said is also an experimental song again. We kind of had a little respite from the experimental songs with Here, There and Everywhere not being quite as experimental. And Yellow Submarine, alright, it's got some sound effects on, but it's probably not as experimental as songs like this one, and I'm Only Sleeping and Love You Too, and Eleanor Rigby as well. But yeah, I just think this picks up the experimentation of the album again. I think they're giving listeners a respite. I've mentioned the sequencing in a few videos. I think Here, There and Everywhere and Yellow Submarine were purposely put there to give people respite from the experimentation. And now with this one, we're closing out side one with a little bit more experimentation, and there's still some great experimentation to come later in the LP. Now, since this song is the last track on side one, I feel like I should say a little bit about side one, you know what I mean? It's a fantastic set of songs, this, with the exception of Yellow Submarine, which isn't even a bad song. It's an annoying song that I don't really reach for all that often. I didn't even say this in my Yellow Submarine video, but I think what annoys me about it is I've just heard it too much. I'm fed up of hearing Yellow Submarine. But everything else, all the other tracks, the other 6 tracks on side one, They're all masterpieces. Every single one is a masterpiece. Taxman, Eleanor Rigby, I'm Only Sleeping, Love You Too, Here, There and Everywhere, and Now She Said, She Said. I think all of them, every single one's a masterpiece. Revolver is a masterpiece, and guess what? All the tracks on side 2 are also masterpieces, but we'll get to them in the next few videos. Right, anyway, to conclude here, because I'm rambling on enough, She Said, She Said is a brilliant song. It's psychedelic rock at its absolute finest once again. It's one of John Lennon's best songs, period. It's one of my favourite songs. I absolutely love this song. So, yeah, she said she knows what it's like to be dead, and I said, who put all that crap in your head? That reminds me, that original demo, and I was concluding, I've gone back down a rabbit hole now. That original demo with some of them lyrics, where John sings stuff like, she's making me feel like my trousers are torn, and I know, and what's the other one? Who put all that crap in your head? Them lyrics, I kind of wish he'd kept them in, at least said them once in the finished thing, because I think they're quite amusing. Anyway, yeah, so we'll conclude it here. Brilliant song, fantastic, just, yeah, it's fab. Fab, toppermost of the poppermost. So that concludes another episode of Revolver In-Depth, folks. Once again, thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this, please do what Paul's doing here and give the video a thumbs up. Leave a comment as well. Do you like She Said, She Said? Do you not like it? If you don't like it, what's wrong with you? But explain why you don't like it in the comments. That'd be interesting to hear. Please do subscribe as well if you're not already subscribed. That would mean a great deal. Believe it or not, a bit of work goes into these videos. You wouldn't think it, would you? But they do, and subscribing supports the channel, and it makes me feel good. It makes me smile, just like She Said, She Said does. Anyway, if you want more videos like this in this series, well, you can. There is a playlist on my channel that consists of all previous episodes in this series, and all future episodes will also be added to that playlist. Anyway, join me next time here on Revolver In Depth, where we're going to have a laugh, basically, because the sun's out. Good day, sunshine, eh? Anyway, until then, do take care.